You know how strong you are. You've simply forgotten. See, sometimes life is a game of consistency. It requires that you show up and give all you've got. And sometimes life reminds you that all you've got is a fabricated story, hovering 6 layers above what you're really made of. It reminds you that all you've got is what you tell yourself when you fall short, so as to rationalize the outcome, pat yourself on the back. All you've got is a hedge, a reason to not have to fully enter the belly of the beast. It's one point flickering away amidst an infinite galaxy of stars. You can't talk about all you've got because you have no idea what that is. And what I want to know is, are you willing to peel it back, to rip that cover off, to stop talking about your best and all you've got, and instead find within yourself a place that transcends anything the mind wants to quantify and put a ribbon on? Inside you, there is a well so deep you could pull from it now until the end of time. Let the question evolve from, does more exist, to, am I willing to reach down, to draw from it my potential, my strength, my resilience? You think the external world is big. The world within is one with no bounds. It is forever. I've pushed myself physically harder in the last few months than I have in a very long time, maybe ever. And you know what the first thing I realized is? When my heart rate is in zone 5, when I am at a point of total shutdown, it takes me about 30 to 60 seconds rest to be completely functional again. And to be in a place of that much duress, discomfort, and recover and jump right back into the game is a superpower I didn't know I had. Why? Because I'd never pushed myself that far. I'd never dared to draw from that well. There's a saying that suggests in order for one to see how strong they are, one must be willing to go further than they've ever gone. When you immerse yourself into hell, you find this entire time you were capable of navigating the flames. Perhaps you were even made to. That kind of makes you sit back and think, doesn't it? I could have easily lived my entire life and not known that about myself, not known what I can endure, been totally ignorant to what I'm capable of, an understanding that transcends the physical, that reminds me I can be strong, calm, and patient amidst life's difficulties. I can remain composed amidst the turbulence, which when you're in it feels equally impossible. You are capable of more than you can imagine, and that's not fluff. That's the reality here. You get what you give yourself permission to obtain, and the deeper you dig, the more you find. The harder you fight, the more life will present to you. So ask yourself how bad you want what you say you want. Is it enough to push yourself to that edge? Is it enough to see firsthand that your ability to recover, to persevere, to transcend adversity is a divine superpower? Because if the answer is yes, then my friend, things are just starting. Life is about to begin. Will you go beyond where most stop? Will you go to that place where you really get to see who you are? Again, not your quote-unquote best, not the lazy title, all you have, but the world beyond that. The place where the only thing that can stop you is you. And if you're willing, Godspeed. Life is about duality. It's about being grateful for the road behind you, but also excited and hungry for what's ahead. That balance is where growth lives. It's why we created AGNS. Always grateful, never satisfied. More than just an apparel company, it's a reminder that there's always another hill to climb. And if you go to agns.lifestyle and you sign up for the email list, you'll get daily inspiration right to your inbox, latest updates on all the new merch drops, as well as a 20% off discount code. Hope to see you there. What if the things you want most aren't really what you need? In fact, what if your struggle, pain, sadness, and despair, the very things you're hoping and praying go away, are in and of themselves the gift, the miracle, because they are messengers bringing you what you could never have obtained otherwise. My friend Logan sent me a note the other day, quoting letter 5 of Letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer, from C.S. Lewis. The voice note basically said, "Eddie, I know you're going to love this." And he was right. I was floored, so moved that I couldn't help but pass it along to some friends, and now I want to share it with you. So, in the same vein as Michael Scott from The Office writing on the whiteboard, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky - Michael Scott." I'm going to quote my pal Logan quoting C.S. Lewis. Lewis said, "If God had granted all the silly prayers I've made in my life, where would I be now?" He then essentially implies that perhaps the prayers that are not answered end up giving us more than the ones that are. That maybe our greatest opportunities come from battling through our difficulties, from seeking to find the value in hardship rather than wishing the hardship away. So it's not that we shouldn't be praying. It's that perhaps we should be asking for not shortcuts or a shelter from the chaos of life, but the wisdom to identify life's necessary lessons. Man, what a beautiful reflection. What if we stopped praying for the painful circumstances to be taken away and instead asked what he wants us to get out of them? It's not, "Please take the storm away." It's, "Where can I unveil strength amidst the storm I didn't even know I had? Where is the value dispersed amongst this valley of despair I find myself navigating?" Part of life is understanding that quote-unquote misfortune is unavoidable. But along with that is understanding that lives are changed and fortunes are made when we are pushed to our max, when we are tired, lonely, scared, defeated, unsure. See, these are the things that teach us to gather ourselves and rebuild stronger, like muscle breaking down to grow back greater than before. You can pray to be dropped at the end of a 10-mile run, but how self-defeating, right? The substance is the journey. It's hurting and finding a way to go on. It's doubting whether you can hit your target and learning to trust yourself. It's running by people on the beach, beer in hand, relaxing, and knowing that in this moment you chose to be different. How insane to pray those things away. They are the miracle. It's asking to skip the movie and arrive at the credits. To skip the book and wake up when the story is resolved and it's time to place it back on the shelf. Our power is derived from our pain, our discomfort. So perhaps when going through it, we remind ourselves what it will all come to mean. We revisit the fact that just because the value appears invisible through the storm doesn't mean it's not there. We just tend to see it later, in the rear view, when the dark clouds are behind us, when the turbulence has died down, and we can now reflect on what stares back in the mirror. So here's to reframing those stories we tell. To not seek to wish away the obstacles, but to seek guidance, understanding, and wisdom in getting from them that which makes life worth living. Here's to going where most don't dare go in order to emerge with what most don't have. Here's to living life with eyes open. To understanding in our despair exists the seed that will become our greatness, our joy, and our triumph. Change the way you see the dragons of life, and you will simultaneously, with each swing of the sword, become capable of slaying them. It's what you do in the dark that determines what you become in the light. Remember, it's easy to shine when the cameras are on, when the crowd is cheering, when you have momentum, when the music is loud and the world applauds your every move. But the truth is, your life is not built in those moments. No, your destiny is forged when no one's watching. When it's just you, your doubts, your fatigue, and the quiet decision to keep going. It's what you do in the dark. And I was reminded of this recently. It was an ordinary Wednesday, doing my ordinary routine. I was at the gym with my trainer, about halfway through the workout. There's obviously no need to get too detailed here, but some important context is just that it was an interval workout. And the goal was to really jack the heart rate up, right? So I'm in the middle of it, switching from upright rows to step-ups on a box repeatedly. No rest, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you get to the point where your body becomes so fatigued, obviously, that it starts to break down. You want to collapse. Your mind starts getting weak. You start looking for shortcuts. And I've been in that moment before, plenty of times, right? That's actually become my new norm with this routine. And I knew that if I could control this, if I could steady myself right there in the storm, in the middle where things are the hardest, where perhaps I'm starting to feel a little sorry for myself, if I could just keep my head up, take it moment by moment, push through, then the rest would take care of itself. I think this is an important note because it's usually not the beginning that breaks us. That's the exciting stuff, right? Before the trials and the tribulations, it's never the warm-up. It's never the first few steps or minutes. It's the valley of despair. It's the middle. That's where the energy fades, the fatigue, your body whispers, "That's enough." It's where doubt asks, "What if you can't?" And maybe even, "Why are you here?" But to know that spot is where champions are made. It's where lives are changed. Well, that's the differentiator. It's what you do in the dark. Admiral McRaven once said, "At your darkest moments, you must be your very best." And isn't that life? When the weight feels too heavy, when the path disappears into shadow, when you want to throw in the towel, that's not the time to shrink. That's the time to look into yourself and rise. Because life is not decided by how you act when things are easy. It's just not. It's decided by how you respond when it's bordering unbearable. It's what you do in the dark. And see, here's the secret most people miss. You do not conquer mountains in one leap. You do not finish marathons by thinking about mile 26. You do not survive heartbreak by solving the next 10 years overnight. You win one rep at a time, 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time. You stay locked in to the current moment because you have power over the current moment. That's how you tame chaos. That's how you survive storms. It's how you take your power back, piece by piece. It's what you do in the dark. And I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it in entrepreneurs staring down debt. I've seen it in runners on blistered feet at mile 20. I've seen it in parents holding their family together with pure grit. Their victory wasn't that they never fell. It wasn't that they never doubted. It was simply that they refused to quit while in the shadows, while navigating the darkest corners of life. Because you bet that storm will come. The question will not be whether it arrives. The question is, when it does, will it break you? Or will it reveal you? It's what you do in the dark. So remember this. You don't have to conquer the whole mountain today. And when you're staring up at the momentous obstacle before you, that should provide relief. You don't have to carry the entire burden at once. You just have to own this moment, this rep, this breath. Because if you can be your best when you feel your worst, if you can steady yourself when everything shakes, you'll discover a truth that changes everything. The storm wasn't there to end you, it was there to reveal you. And what it reveals will always come down to this. It's what you do in the dark. Your constant entertaining of worst-case scenarios is why you aren't miles ahead of where you currently are. Let me explain. Last weekend, I was on a sunset hike in Scottsdale, and we just reached the top of the first climb. We paused for a second, took in the views, had a few sips of water, and then turned to carry on with the hike. We probably made it about 10 feet when we heard a frantic voice behind us. It was like, "Hey, hey!" And I stopped, turned around, pointed my finger at my chest. "You talking to us?" "Yeah," the woman said, just completely out of breath. She goes, "It's almost sunset, and I saw a sign down there in the parking lot." And her breathing was so heavy she had to stop every few words. So the sign, it said, "At sunset, they close the gate, that every car still in the parking lot's gonna be locked inside the gate, won't be able to get out." Another pause to collect herself. "And I was just wondering, do you know if this is true? Will they really? Have you been here before? Is there any chance I'll be stuck here?" I said, "Well, I haven't been here at sunset, so I don't really know." I started kind of racking my brain thinking about some of my favorite hikes in the area, Gateway, Pinnacle Peak. Then Rose mentioned, I'm pretty sure the gates do close, but they have a sensor that when you drive up to them, even at night, they open and you can easily get out. And I said, okay. So I just yelled back, we're not totally sure, but we think the gates open for you. Even after sunset, even when it's dark, you should be fine. I don't know, she yelled. I just don't know. I have to leave. I'm out. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. And just like it was in a movie, she turned around and just sprinted down the mountain. It had, the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland vibes. And we kind of chuckled and just, hey, you never know what you're going to come across around here, do you? Turned back around, carried on with our hike. Now, important to note, I'm not knocking or making fun of that woman. Let me tell you why. That's been me more times in my life than I can count. Blowing minor inconveniences way out of proportion. Terrified that something might go wrong. And it's derailed progress and growth, change and excitement, all because the path wasn't certain. I've said no to trips and projects and opportunities. I've ignored the thing I knew my soul was pulling me towards. I've walked away from adventures. You name it. Because what if, somewhere along the way, a metaphorical gate closed? Oh, the irony of refusing to move because someday you might be stuck. And then you turn that into a full thought experiment, right? Let's say this person was correct. You go down after dark and the gate's locked and you're stuck. You have to call law enforcement to open it up. Inconvenient, absolutely. For everyone involved, admittedly, not ideal. But why is our instinct to act like we'd starve to death at Tom's Thumb trailhead? Our brains flash this image of ourselves writing a goodbye letter to everyone we know with a scroll and a quill pen for some reason. I'm not sure why. Dear loved ones, they closed the gate. Tell Michael he can have my signature John Mayer guitar. Right? When you play it out, it's lunacy. It's insane. The worst case scenarios we create are complete nonsense, almost always. Because look, it's one thing to be reckless and careless. It's another to live your entire life in bubble wrap because you may trip and fall somewhere along the way. Now, obviously, this is way bigger than that story I just shared. Right? This is about the trap of leaving so much of life on the table because we placate to the downside. We constantly entertain all the things that can go wrong, forgetting that 1, almost everything is solvable, and 2, mostly 2, the question, what if everything works out? Hey, what if things go right? Why is that possibility so often left out of the equation? What if you leave that toxic relationship? And sure, perhaps after a brief period of chaos and stagnation, things get better than they've ever been. What if you start the business? And yeah, maybe rocky at first, but after that, it completely changes your life. It causes you to level up as a person while also putting you in position to add value to the world you could never have in your old life. What if you decide to level up your fitness? And you bet the first month or 2 at the gym, you feel like a fish out of water. But ultimately, you transform mentally and physically in ways that leave you just feeling different, more confident in every room you walk into. Why don't we think about the upside in scenarios like that? When we turned around and finished that hike, it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever experienced. The orange and purple sky, the path through the rocks that felt like something out of a Lord of the Rings movie. The view from the top during blue hour, when the sky is still painted all those colors, but it's dark enough that the lights from the houses way down in the valley look almost animated, like a cartoon or something. Closest comparison we came up with was the aesthetic from the movie Polar Express, right? Almost doesn't look real. And I just think, like, imagine missing that because of something as trivial as a parking inconvenience. In the grand scheme of things, what's more meaningful? What's more important? What matters? Big picture. Guys, we are missing life's sunsets because we are worried about the shadows they cast. Life is meant to be lived. And I get, by the way, how messy things can feel and sometimes are. But the simplest of experiences remind us our brains, they want safety, not growth. They want comfort, not adventure. They want to know at the expense of ever diving into the unknown. Remember that the most important, valuable, memorable, beautiful things you will do in your life are tied to some sort of risk or trade-off. And look, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong for you. How could I? But what I can do from this room in Scottsdale, Arizona, is remind you that most, if not the vast majority of things that don't go the way you want them to, are reversible, solvable. Think really hard about the sunsets you say no to because of life's metaphorical gates. Oftentimes, that decision equates to giving up an entire world of possibility because you bow down to a single minor inconvenience. That's not you, and it's not why you're here. Don't chase the made-up ghost stories. Chase your sunsets. Oh, and just for the record, after the most beautiful hike of our lives, we drove up to the gate, it automatically opened for us, and we drove home. But you already knew that. Will you be courageous enough to light your lantern in the dark? I recently heard a story about Florence Chadwick, 1952, who was a swimmer attempting to swim from Catalina Island to the California coast, which all in all is about a 26-mile journey through shark-infested waters and, the whole 9 yards. And so 15 hours into her swim, this heavy fog rolls in, and it's so thick she can barely see the boats beside her. Shoreline completely invisible, right? So she sees nothing. And, exhausted and just disoriented, she finally feels like enough is enough, asks to be pulled out of the water. And it's once she is lifted out and climbs into the boat that she realized she'd been less than a mile from the finish. And she's quoted later saying, I think if I could have seen the shore, I would have made it. But things feel extra heavy when you don't get that reassurance of the finish line. And see, that's just it. Sometimes you won't see the shore. The darkness, the fog, the uncertainty, they hide the destination. And in those moments, the only way forward is to keep moving with the little light that you have. Your lantern, metaphorically, of course, doesn't need to show the whole coastline. Just enough to take the next stroke. 2 months later, she tries again, visualizing the coast throughout the entirety of her trip, and arrives at the destination. See, the enemy here isn't the lack of visibility in and of itself. It's the instinct to panic when we cannot see the destination, forgetting that we have enough light to illuminate the space immediately in front of us, and that is always sufficient. Even the most courageous among us know it goes against every instinct to slowly move into the dark, not knowing, not understanding, but piecing things together in real time, step by step, breath by breath, decision by decision. One of my favorite quotes or ideas is that if you wait until you're ready, you will be waiting all your life. See, the difference comes down to not who has the most perfectly executed plan, but rather who's willing to turn on their lantern. Who will endure discomfort before they have answers? Who's willing to go before they have a clue? It's easy on paper, easy to think about, not easy to do. When you immediately feel the weight of criticism, of doubt, of pressure, societal expectations, comparison. When you're stuck in the gap between where you are and where you most want to be. Right? All those things, those fears that keep us on the sidelines. But the lantern you light is the small action, the bridge to get you to the next point, and the next, and the next, and those points, they add up. They are what empires are made of. They are the agents of change. They're the email you send when you don't feel like it. The workout you do when the mind says, not today, man. The vulnerable conversation you initiate even though your voice shakes. These little flames admittedly don't light up the entire world, but they give you enough light to keep moving forward. There is always enough at your disposal to do the next thing, and the next, and the next. And these little acts of courage, well, they ultimately place you where you need to be. Whether that's on a team, an executive suite, or the California shoreline after a 26-mile swim. I need you to remember that. You have everything you need. But just like a seed that will one day become the mightiest tree in the forest, everything you need doesn't unfold all at once. It is one day, one action, one move at a time. So the next time you feel helpless, as though the pressures of life are too much and the weight of the world too heavy, remember, it is not yours to carry in totality. You cannot jump a mountain. That will never be expected of you. But what's yours, what's within your power and control, is the ability to turn your lantern on and move. Just move. Because in the dark, you don't need the sun. You only need that lantern and the courage to light it. You're not lost. You're climbing. Imagine that life were a ladder, and each rung a lesson. And as that ladder pointed directly up into the clouds, what if it brought with it some distinct characteristics? What if the climb was not as simple as one would think? not as straightforward, clear, or intuitive, but rather a series of curveballs and unknowns. What if some rungs required more time and energy? While we sit and often grow impatient, the world was merely gifting us lessons and armor required to continue the ascent. What if the spacing between certain rungs was further apart than others? Where some were easy and required but a mere step, and others required a jump and a leap of faith. They asked that we trust, throw ourselves up, grab it, and pull ourselves on to the next step. And while containing substantially more risk, they also bring with them a confidence, as we learn that we can traverse these wider and wider gaps. What if some were shaky and some firm, but all contained a very distinct purpose? So you are not lost, you are climbing, rung by rung, lesson by lesson, step by step. Because if life is a ladder, then up we go, to the airwaves like songs on the radio. And how high we climb, only heaven knows. Do we stay or go? I think I'll take the ladder. If life is a ladder, then up we go. Place shells of ourselves on the rungs below. Leave worlds behind, but finding home. If life is a ladder, then up we go. If life is a ladder, then up we go. A teacher. A personalized trajectory up towards the infinite, where it doesn't make sense to look to your left or right. It doesn't make sense to watch those beside you, those climbing their own ladders at their own pace, because we are all playing a different game with different destinations, different variables, different stories. Where greatness lies in respecting and appreciating their ascension, but also being indifferent towards it, for it is not yours. Rung after rung, you find yourself. Some stopping points painted in beautiful layers of reassurance, others bare metal, void of all that we consider beautiful in the moment. Yeah, some rungs are lonely. And you think, this must be life, huh? This must be the way things are, right? Wrong. This is one step. And perhaps one of the more important steps, because the painful chapters build foundations of gratitude for the best chapters. We must know pain before we can appreciate its absence. We must know loneliness before we can appreciate good company. This rung is not forever. But believe it or not, its impact will be. So on to the next, my friend, on to the next. Then you look down, see how far you've come, see what you used to be. One small step at a time adds up, doesn't it? Okay, now look up. Imagine where 10 more years of climbing will take you. Impossible to predict, sure, because the ladder is evolving with you, but now you know you're capable of adaptation and persistence. You control one thing, your ability to arrive at a new step, to learn, to adjust, and to move. That is power. Whether it's a leap or a crawl, a shaky or steady step, variables are just variables. The metal stairs are not your destiny, they are merely the arena in which you will make your own. Like a gladiator stepping into the arena of life. See, you are not lost, you are climbing, rung by rung, step by step. Because if life is a ladder, then up we go, to the airwaves like songs on the radio. And how high we climb, only heaven knows. Do we stay or go? I think I'll take the latter. If life is a ladder, then up we go. Place shells of ourselves on the rungs below. Leave worlds behind, but finding home. If life is a ladder, then up we go. To the place in the sky that truly terrifies you. One, because you are capable, and two, because up there is where the good stuff lives. The things you'll look back on, the things that will come to define you, all of it. Because if life is a ladder, then up we go. To the airwaves like songs on the radio. And how high we climb, only heaven knows. Do we stay or go? I think I'll take the latter. If life is a ladder, then up we go. Place shells of ourselves on the rungs below. Leave worlds behind while finding home. If life is a ladder, then up we go. If life is a ladder, then up we go. I wanted to know whether or not my heroes cried. Odd question, sure. But how much separates us? Are we merely in different leagues? Or are we from different planets? Do they ever feel down? And if so, how do they appear so composed? What made them the chosen ones? Do they ever feel less than? Ill-equipped, fearful? Do they ever look around in a room and wonder, should I even be here? Or were they gifted with a sense of complete and total acceptance? It's funny, a big part of my collegiate experience was rowing, which means pretty frequently we would find ourselves doing sprint workouts on the rowing machine. So 2K tests, 6K tests, all that good stuff, right? And I remember wondering, particularly the fastest few guys on the team, what was their level of pain compared to mine? Could it be that they hurt less doing the exact same workout? Was it somehow easier for them? The answer to that's probably no. In fact, I'd bet they navigated the exact same hell I did. I think the best athletes endure the same physical discomfort. Industry leaders battle the same insecurities. The ones walking into rooms with their heads held high and shoulders back, yeah, they ask the same very human questions that I do. In other words, yes, our heroes cry. You know what else they do, though? Find a way to go regardless. When it hurts, they adjust and go. When they're scared, they reassure themselves and keep walking. When doubts emerge, they remind themselves that someone has to be the person to step up, so why not me? One of the biggest mistakes I've made over the course of my life, and still I occasionally catch myself making, is assuming the good stuff, the good characteristics, good traits, well, they're possessed and utilized by every single beating heart on the planet. While the quote-unquote bad things, they were personally assigned to me and me only. Perhaps because we can just be so lonely with our suffering, it's hard to imagine that others deal with it. Especially when everyone's online slideshow is, one of trophies, smiling faces, and captions that start, "I'm so proud to announce that." You know what I mean. But they hurt. Because like you, they are human, and human beings inevitably hurt. Life is highs, and life is lows. And no one escapes the lows. Here is the deal, though. Hurt is not the end. It's the fork in the road. Hurt is decision time. Oh, easy for you to say, Eddie. You don't know my pain. Well, on the one hand, yes, true. On the other, you're doing exactly what I'm talking about here. Comparing suffering is a fool's errand. You can destroy with a hammer as well as an atom bomb. I don't think the entity being completely flattened cares which one does the leveling. And so, this universal truth poses a somewhat obvious question. If we all hurt and our heroes do cry, what is the differentiator? Well, it's the ability to address the pain and use it for something good. This is nothing more than me pointing at those currently sitting on mountaintops and saying, look, they did it. The runner who wins the race didn't suffer less. He or she navigated that suffering better than the rest of the group, both during the race and the training leading up to it. The actor or actress on the big screen, they weren't dropped onto a Tarantino set and handed a few $1 million, right? Odds are they went to hundreds, if not thousands of readings and auditions, but despite being told no countless times, which in and of itself is a form of mental duress and torture, they picked their head up and said, this isn't the one, but my time is coming. The guys playing ball at a high level, right? Putting in hours and hours of unrewarded, private, personal work, both when they wanted to and when they didn't, when they were tired. It's not a matter of pain or no pain. It's a matter of sink or swim. It's life giving you something heavy and leaving you to decide, is this a burden or a gift? What will you make of this weight that's been thrust upon you? As we find ourselves hurting, right, navigating real emotions, I think it's a game of one, feeling, sitting with it, understanding it, and then two, choosing to rise above it. Turning that pain into purpose, making it the differentiator. When you hurt, remind yourself of this very important truth. Most people stop right now where you stand. Most throw in the towel. Most say right here, I'm done. And what an opportunity for you to stand alone. For you to be the one who rises regardless, moves into the chaos. So yes, your heroes do cry because they feel. But their feelings aren't drivers. Their feelings are passengers on a journey to evolution, on a path to something beautiful. The same path, by the way, you owe to yourself to walk down. Just beyond the discomfort you once thought was the end of the world. Perhaps it's time, despite the chaos, the duress, and the discomfort, to rise above all that noise and go there. Before the first light at dawn, before anyone wakes, there's a battle being fought. A battle no one can see, but a battle that determines everything. A young Spartan stood before the morning sun. His village was quiet His peers were sleeping, yet he was awake. And no, there was no battle that had arrived. But in his heart and in his mind, he knew the battle was coming. And in that quiet hour, he whispered to himself, "The enemy you cannot see is the enemy you must train for." Because, pragmatically speaking, there was no enemy out there. It wasn't waiting across a field. It wasn't a man, a beast, or a weapon. The enemy was invisible. It was doubt. It was fear. It was the hesitation that lives in your chest when no one's watching. The weakness that whispers, maybe this is too hard. Maybe you're not quite ready. Come back tomorrow. And that right there, that invisible weight, was the enemy he had to face first. And so he trained. He ran while the hills burned his lungs. He lifted while his muscles screamed. He sparred while his body ached from yesterday's strikes. And every day, he trained in silence. Every repetition was a quiet promise to himself. Every drop of sweat was a declaration. Every fall, every bruise, every failure, he embraced it. Because he knew what you practice in the dark determines what you win in the light. All day, every day, through it all, he repeated the words, "The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for." He understood a truth that the world rarely tells you. The battles that shape you are never the ones you see coming. They're the ones you can't anticipate. They're the ones that hit when no one else is watching, and if you are not ready, you will fail. That's not personal, that is just life. And so every day he committed to this process, and people laughed at him. They mocked his effort. They whispered that he was wasting his time, his energy, his life in totality. Why do you run up hills that have no end? Why do you spar with shadows? Why do you lift what you don't need? And he could have listened. He could have stopped, could have joined them in their comfort, their excuses, and their shortcuts, but he did not. Because he knew something they didn't know. He knew that the belief in yourself is stronger than validation from the world. He knew that preparation for the invisible is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for. And then, one day, the battle came. It was sudden, unforgiving, brutal. Men faltered, hearts froze, chaos roared. But not him. He moved with a rhythm, a certainty, a precision that could only have come from years of fighting those quote-unquote shadows. From training for the unseen, from embracing discomfort when no one believed it mattered. Every dodge, every strike, every decision was already written in the hours that he'd spent alone. See, that battle was never about chance. It was about faith in himself. The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for. Here's the thing people don't understand. That enemy, that one you cannot see, is everywhere. It's the morning you don't feel like waking up. It's the doubt that creeps in before you even start. It's the fear that whispers you're not ready. It's the voice that says maybe tomorrow, maybe later. And yet every time you train anyway, every time you push through anyway, every time you refuse to quit, you win. Not because the world gives it to you, Not because circumstances align, but because your belief in yourself becomes stronger than the obstacles around you. The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for. And by the end, the young Spartan didn't just survive. He didn't just fight, he conquered. Not the enemy in the field, but the enemy in his mind. And when people asked him how he was so ready, he smiled and quietly said, I trained for what no one could see. I prepared for what most ignore. I fought the battle that was invisible, and that made all the difference. The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for. You will face your invisible enemies. Doubt, fear, hesitation. That inner voice that tells you to stop before you even began. Train for them. Prepare in silence. Strengthen yourself in the shadows. Because one day the battle will arrive. And when it does, you'll be the exception. You'll be ready. No, not because life was kind. It wasn't. Not because luck favored you. It didn't. But because you believed in yourself when no one else could see it. The enemy you cannot see is the one you must train for. So step forward. Face the invisible. Become unstoppable. And be the exception. If I showed you two different versions of your life, laid out side by side like roads, one built on hesitation and fear, and the other on courage, I think you would be shocked at how different the destinations look. Because here's the truth. The smallest acts of courage, the ones you almost forget about, tiny decision points, they are the fork in the road. They decide who you become. But the tragic thing is, most of us don't even realize we're standing at that intersection until it's too late. Sometimes far too late. So let's run through the thought experiment. Let's imagine it. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture two distinct paths stretching into the distance. On the first path, hesitation and fear rule. You play it safe, very safe. You wait for that perfect time that never arrives. And along this road, regret is everywhere. Abandoned dreams lying in the ditch, opportunities passed like empty mile markers. You don't crash, you don't burn, you don't soar either. Life is safe, it's predictable, and it's small. Now on the second path, the path of courage, we'll call it. Doesn't look glamorous at first. Perhaps indistinguishable from the first. The road is rough, the map is incomplete. You can't see more than a few steps ahead. But each little decision, each act of courage, each time you whisper yes when fear says no, another piece of the map unfolds. And the further you go, the further you push, well, the more expansive the horizon becomes. It is a create your own ending novel. And again, at first, the difference between these two roads is not dramatic. It's not cinematic. It's subtle, almost invisible. that difference is everything. The truth is, it's not the spotlight, larger than life, on the stage moments that define us. It's a culmination of unseen moments. It's when the crowd is gone, the lights are off, when you're left at home, alone with your own thoughts. That's when courage whispers. And I want to be clear, not the kind of courage that makes headlines. It's not the kind that trends on social media. It's the kind that says, hey, just one more step, because I know you can. Not to win or emerge triumphant, but simply to persist. And it's in that persistence, hidden, invisible to the world, that transformation lives. And I think as we look back on our own journeys, there probably won't be one clear path that, unveiled itself. At least not for me. I see dots. I see moments that seemed insignificant at the time, but when I connect them, they tell a story. And see, I'd be lying if I said I knew in the moment the weight those little decisions carried. The value that came from, my most painful moments, loneliest moments, embarrassing moments, the times I felt let down, but picked my head up and did this small thing, pushed forward, carried on. I get it now. Those decisions weren't small. I see myself in that tiny Boston apartment, reflecting back to the beginning when it all started, sitting on the floor with a cheap microphone, recording words I wasn't sure anyone would ever hear. I see the nights I stayed up until 2 a.m., hitting upload, knowing, those videos were probably going to get 10 views at most. I see the risks I almost didn't take, the trips, conversations, decisions that could easily have been postponed or ignored. Each moment on its own felt small, almost irrelevant, but together they became the map. The famous Stoic, Marcus Aurelius, wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, and be one." I think about that often, for the simple reminder that courage is not theory and it's not philosophy. It's practice. It's merely action. It's where the rubber hits the road in your life. Not the big speech. No. Just pressing record when no one's listening. When no one cares. It's not the viral video. It's the hundreds of uploads no one saw. The truth is, we are all carrying a map like this. Every decision you make, every nod to courage, it draws another line. And one day you'll look back and see the picture it created. The magic to others that seemingly culminated out of thin air. But that's not the case. I wanted to include this because this is one of the more cliche quotes floating around social media. I hear it all the time. Aristotle, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." And well, the truth is, most of the cliches in life are cliche for a reason. When you think about it, and understand that excellence is not one grand performance or standing ovation. It's not the record-breaking moment or the medal ceremony. It becomes much more tangible, much more real, much more accessible to you. It's brushing your teeth every day. It's lacing up your shoes when no one's watching and going outside. It's choosing discipline over comfort, not once, but every day. Not because you have to, but because it's who you are. I think we overestimate the big events and simultaneously underestimate the little ones, right? But the little decisions, like I said, are everything. James Clear puts it beautifully, right? His book Atomic Habits has been on the bestsellers list for as long as I can remember, years at this point. And the way he talks about compounding, he says 1% better every day doesn't just add up, it multiplies. And I think courage, self-image, it's the same. Choosing to show up when you don't feel like it, it compounds. Choosing to speak when your voice shakes, it compounds. Choosing to forgive, to try again, to risk failure, it all compounds. I think of a raindrop. One is nothing. But thousands, millions create rivers. Rivers carve valleys. Valleys shape landscapes. Every small act of courage compounds, and over time, those little nods build a life. And so if you're looking around at a life that has lost its meaning or is not the life you would have chosen, perhaps it's time to start nodding at the opportunity, to stepping into that courage, to rebuilding, rewiring, reframing what's around you. Right? Picture yourself in a storm. The rain hammering down, the wind howling, the road ahead a complete blur. Right? That's life sometimes. We've all been there. Uncertainty, chaos, all the things. And in those storms, you don't need the entire roadmap. You don't need a final answer. You don't know exactly how long it'll last. All you need is the courage to nod once, to say, I'm still here and I'm still moving. And every time you do that, funny enough, the storm always ends. I'm sure you've had storms like that. I know I have. Staring out my window, wondering if I was wasting time. Asking myself if I was being delusional. And yet something inside always whispered, just one more. I attribute everything to that. So no matter how bad I felt or disappointed or discouraged, the door was never cracked. It was always shut. This is my world. And regardless of what happens, I can always do one more. Always. That whisper wasn't glamorous. It was never celebrated, but it was, in its own way, courage. Epictetus said, we cannot control the storm, only how we respond to it. And you don't need to leap it. Just endure. Sometimes responding to the storm isn't about conquering it, it's refusing to bow. Think about all your storms. Maybe it's a rejection email, bills piling up, the fight you had last night, the doubt in your head. What would one nod of courage look like for you today? Pressure off, right? Again, you're not leaping mountains. You're moving forward. You're finding the strength for one more. Sometimes it's just a whisper that says, not yet, don't quit yet. There's more in you. And when you keep nodding long enough, you become someone different. The storm, it transformed you. Out there in the world, there is that myth of the big moment. It's just who we are as people, right? It's the excitement. We love big moments, buzzer beaters, billion-dollar ideas, overnight success stories. Those moments are essentially illusions. They're not beginnings. They're culminations, they're finish lines, they're the podium. One of my favorite stories I've ever told was the Spartans at Thermopylae, right? Those 300 men standing against an army of thousands. History remembers their defiance as one dramatic stand. But in truth, it wasn't one moment, it was countless small moments. I mean, picture it. Dawn in Greece, mist rolling in over the cliffs, torches flickering against the shield wall. 300 men locking arms, staring down an ocean of soldiers. Can you imagine the fear in their stomachs? The temptation to run? And yet they chose to stand their ground. To raise their shield one more time, to step forward when stepping back would be obviously easier, to lock arms with the man next to them. That's not luck. That wasn't pulled out of thin air. Courage there was not one act, it was every act, repeated until it became their legacy. Or think about some of the great inventors. Think a big name, Edison. We tell his story like he invented the light bulb one night with a stroke of brilliance. That's not how it happened. Imagine falling, failing, losing 10 times, then 100, then 1,000. Imagine walking back into the lab at 2 a.m. after another failed test. Imagine being laughed at, doubted, dismissed. But still, he persisted. Those thousands of failures were absolutely not a waste of time. They were the map unfolding. They were his path. And that's what we forget. The big moment is never big by itself. It's thousands of little nods stacked high enough to see the horizon, finally. And so if there's one thing to take from this, one idea, one thought, I hope you'll understand that transformation does not happen overnight. It can't. It doesn't happen because the world suddenly hands you a stage. It happens in the persistence no one else sees, what you do behind the curtain. And so, my challenge to you, take a walk to find time with yourself and ask, what is one small act of courage you can take this week? Not next year. Not when things, quote unquote, settle down. Not when you feel ready. This week. Because those little acts are not little, they are everything. They are the map you're carrying. They are the compass guiding you home. And a lot of potential goes untapped. A lot of opportunities disappear. A lot of greatness never materializes because people are waiting for the big moment. They're waiting for some crowd to appear. They're waiting for perfect conditions. This is life. You're not handed perfect conditions. You make them. Take this step in front of you, nod your head in the storm, and keep going. It'll feel lonely, it can be exhausting, but it will be worth it. There will be a moment where you look around and are so grateful that you kept going, words won't be able to articulate it. The little acts of courage will become your map. And that map will take you exactly where you need to go. There is no reward in life without risk. This morning, having that cup of coffee, I was on X, seeing what was going on in the world, and happened to come across an excerpt from, I believe, the Lex Fridman podcast. And one of my favorite authors, Walter Isaacson, was speaking. And I'm going to read you a piece of the quote here, because I think it's nothing short of incredible. He says, "I've had a gentle, sweet career, and I've got to cover really interesting people." Side note, that's what he does. He writes a lot of really good biographies. He did Elon Musk's biography, Steve Jobs' biography, just really, really good author. Back to the quote. He says, "But I've never shot off a rocket that might someday get to Mars. I've never moved us into the era of electric vehicles. I've never stayed up all night on the factory floor. I don't have quite those, either the drives or the addiction to risk." He then goes on. "I mean, Elon's addicted to risk. He's addicted to adventure. Me, if I see something that's risky, I spend some time calculating. Okay, upside, downside here. But," and here's the best part of the quote, "that's another reason that people like Elon Musk get stuff done and people like me write about the Elon Musks." When I saw that, I couldn't help but pause, because here's someone I admire greatly. I don't think there's anyone in the world that takes such complex characters and people and tells their story in such an incredible way. He's built an entire career doing this, and he's reflecting on the difference between documenting life and daring to create it, between writing about the rockets and building them. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. This is a personal opinion. Sure, he's not sending rockets to Mars. But the courage to start writing and to put yourself out there like that is not nothing. So it's not 0 and 100 here, but I think you get the point. There are people that build, that put all of themselves on the line, and then there are people who view that, who analyze that, and give their opinions on that. And they're very different things. You know, that quote brought me back to a truth I've wrestled with my whole life. It's essentially the difference between safety and risk, between holding on to what you know and betting on what you could be. See, safety's comfortable. It's logical. It lets you sleep at night. It is the warm blanket in the middle of the storm, and for a long time, that was me. It might be you now. Maybe it was you in the past. Right? I thought if I just stayed calculated, if I minimized risk, then success would be inevitable. But here's what I've learned. Avoiding risk does not guarantee safety. But it does guarantee something. You know what that is? Stagnation. It guarantees your story never makes it past the opening chapter. And what that quote emphasized is that at the core of every great story, there must be risk. There's a timeless anecdote that, when I searched for it, is associated with Cortez. I'm not sure how true that is, but regardless, right? The idea in and of itself is powerful. As the story goes, in 1519, he stood at the shores of the New World with, his hundreds of men, staring at a vast unknown, and his order was famously, burn the ships. Why? Because that act makes retreat no longer an option. That means the only way forward is through. Because when you eliminate the safety net, you find out what you're truly capable of. You don't accidentally put rockets on Mars. you go all in. That becomes your life. Similarly, Cortez in this story is eliminating all off-ramps. It highlights the principle progress requires risk, the willingness to step into an unknown. Cortez understood something that Elon Musk understands. Assuming that's actually Cortez's quote, of course. But the idea is, if you want to reshape the world, you have to be willing to put something on the line. Now, I've had those micro moments in my life. I'm sure you have as well. Moments standing at a crossroads where we have to decide, do we stay comfortable or do we put ourselves out there? And every season of life has different variations of this. Right now, for me, it's particular business ventures that contain risk and some fitness changes, some lifestyle changes. Every one of those decisions in and of themselves at the starting block is terrifying. I don't know how it's gonna play out. I don't know if I'm gonna fall flat on my face. But historically, those terrifying decisions are what made me. The risks I took became the bridges to the life I live now. And right now is no exception. It is a bridge to the future, to an evolved self, a better, improved reality. I think back and wonder, imagine if I didn't go, if I didn't jump. And that's the thing we often forget. There's a cost to not taking risks too. The cost of regret, the cost of what if, the cost of living life from the sidelines while others are in the arena. It's not just about what we risk losing if we leap. It's about what we risk never experiencing if we don't. Life is a game of trade-offs. You can minimize risk and be a spectator, or embrace it and step into unlimited opportunity. Risk is the doorway to transformation. It's the teacher that strips away the inessential and forces you to grow. Let's face it, no one remembers the person who stayed comfortable. No one writes books about the guy who stayed where it was safe. We remember the ones who dared, the ones who said, burn the ships, the ones who said, I don't know what's on the other side, but I'll find out. The ones who knew that rockets don't get to Mars by staying in the hangar. So I go back to the quote, and I remind myself this life isn't about documenting what others do or consuming their pictures or videos or behaviors. It's about writing your own story, one risk at a time, one act of courage at a time. And yes, risk is uncomfortable. Absolutely, it's uncertain. But without it, there's no adventure. Without it, there is no change. Like I said, every single time I look back at my journey, every breakthrough came from stepping out of what was safe, from leaping before I was ready, from risking failure for the chance to build something extraordinary. And that is what I want to leave you with today. The next time life gives you the choice between safety and risk or watching and daring, bet on yourself. Take that leap, burn the ships. Because the greatest tragedy isn't failure. It's never finding out who you could have become had you only been willing to risk it all. It's not that you can't have more. It's that for some reason you've decided more is unrealistic. You have settled for good, believing that great is for someone else, and when you aim at good, you'll get good. But when you aim at great, well, you're playing a different game entirely. So which star are you aiming for? There's a ship in the middle of an endless ocean. Waves crash against its bow, storms rise, winds howl, the night stretches on without end. And the crew looks up, not because they can touch those stars, not because they will ever stand among them, but because their light gives direction. And that's how we live. We are ships on vast oceans, navigating waters too unpredictable to ever fully control. And while we can't command the tides or stop the storms, we can choose the direction we sail. Most importantly, we can choose the stars we aim for. So it's only appropriate that I ask you, which stars are you aiming for? Because life without something bigger than yourself is like sailing without a compass. You drift, you wander, you circle the same waters. But when you have a North Star, when you set your eyes on what matters most, you can endure storms. You can survive nights. You can carry on when it feels impossible. Which star are you aiming for? One thing I've learned is no one reaches greatness by accident. It does not happen. No one wakes up one morning and, just arrives at destiny. It's not luck nor coincidence. It's the result of countless nights, being led by a faint glow in the distance, moving 1 degree closer, one decision more aligned, one risk taken when it would have been easier to stay anchored in comfort, but you know that. And here's the truth. You will never reach the stars. That's not the point. The point is that they keep you moving forward. They push you outside yourself. The point is that they give meaning to the waves and purpose to the journey. They give beauty to the unknown. Which star are you aiming for? When doubt whispers, why bother? When fear shouts, you'll never make it. When people laugh because they cannot see what you see, look up. Remember that stars are invisible to those who refuse to lift their gaze. But for those who dare, for those who dream, those stars are guides. Reminders that progress is not about arrival, but about direction. Which star are you aiming for? Maybe your star is becoming the person you needed as a child. Maybe it's building something that outlasts you. Maybe it's running towards freedom or love or peace. Whatever it is, hold it, because life will test you. The ocean will shake your faith. But that star, the one shining above, it will not move. It will not flicker. It will not betray you. And one day you'll look back at the map of your life and realize those storms, they didn't break you. They were the fun part. They shaped you. And those nights didn't blind you. They taught you how to see. And those stars, they weren't the destination in and of themselves. They led you to who you were always meant to be. So tonight, when the sea feels endless, when the horizon feels too far away, and your heart whispers, turn back, don't. Look up, breathe in, and remember the only command that matters. Follow your star. The flat ground always arrives. And you might not know what this means, but you will. It's been the truth of every run I've ever taken, every mountain I've ever climbed, and overall, every challenge I've faced in life. It's the reminder that's carried me when my lungs burned, my legs felt like lead. It's been there when the finish line seemed impossibly far away. And the idea kind of reoccurred to me perfectly a few days ago on a run up Pinnacle Peak, which is a duo of mountains about 20 minutes up the road from me. Essentially, two connecting mountains. You run up one and then down it, and it connects to the other mountain, which you run up and then down. And once you've completed that, you kind of turn around and you just retrace those steps. Up, down, up, down. It takes about 40 minutes. And I've done it about 10 times now. And the hardest part is what I've called climb 3, right? That's the point where you run up, down, you turn around to do it all again, and it's technically your third ascent. You know, the start of the journey back. And it just so happens to be the steepest part of the climb and the longest part of the climb. It feels like endless steps. And as you can imagine, running uphill like that, your heart races and, you know, your lungs, they gasp for air. And when you're in the thick of it, right, precisely in that moment, you know, you've already run halfway, you're exhausted, you know, your legs are starting to feel heavy, and the thought of another 20 minutes, it's almost impossible to compartmentalize. It feels overwhelming in totality. Here's what I realized. That feeling, that overwhelming sense of discomfort, you won't feel that the entire run. In fact, you won't even feel that the entire duration of quote-unquote climb 3. Why? Well, because even during climb 3, there are these little 10-second stretches where the ground flattens, and it creates this tiny reprieve, a gift. And you might laugh and go, 10 seconds, that's nothing. It's more than enough for your body to reset. Like, funny enough, 10 seconds is an eternity. It's enough to catch your breath. It's enough to, get yourself together as you give your feet, your legs, the gift of running on flat ground for a few seconds. It gives you everything you need to carry on. And all runs are like that. You know, it's not necessarily pain until the end. It's pain until the next reprieve. And there's a giant difference between the two things. You just need to make it to the flat ground, which is there and will arrive sooner than you think. And every time life feels too hard, similarly, there's always a reprieve, always a patch of earth that flattens out, always a singular moment to breathe. And so the power in being able to put your faith in those moments is life-changing. Let the course take care of the rest. You know, and the next day, I was talking to my videographer, Brandon, about this metaphor. You know, I realized this running yesterday. Does it make sense? Does it resonate? And his eyes kind of lit up. He's like, yeah, it reminds me of aid stations in ultramarathons. You know, because the runners, they're not thinking about 100 miles. They're thinking about the next aid station. That place where you can breathe and regroup and recover and set out again. This allows the miles to break down into manageable pieces. The impossible becomes possible in bite-sized chunks. That's life. You know, we break under the weight of forever, under the illusion that the pain or the uncertainty or the uphill climb must last for eternity. But it doesn't. Life is not a 100-mile sentence of suffering. It's a series of aid stations, a handful of breaths on flat ground. So when it hurts, don't carry the burden of the entire journey on your shoulders. That doesn't help you. It doesn't help the situation. Don't let your mind convince you that the climb never ends. No, carry what's in front of you. Run to the next aid station, the next reprieve. Find your next patch of flat ground. It's there. And the truth is, life is not built in lifetimes, it's built in moments. It's not conquered in decades, it's conquered in seconds. And if you can master the seconds, if you can take the next step, if you can make it to that breath of air, you can handle the rest. That, my friends, is how you move mountains. It's how you turn impossible things into inevitable victories. Not by taking the whole weight of the world at once, but by trusting the intervals of grace along the way. And when you look back, you will realize what felt unbearable was only temporary. What felt infinite was just a climb. And guess what? You climbed it. The reprieves carry you. The aid stations save you. The flat ground reminds you that life doesn't ask you to be invincible. It asks you to be faithful to the next step. So the next time life feels too heavy, don't think about the entire journey. Don't measure yourself against the whole mountain. Just get to the flat ground in front of you, and then the next one, and the next one. That's how impossible things are done. That's how ordinary lives become extraordinary stories. One reprieve at a time. In your darkest moments, remember, flat ground always arrives. Earlier today, we came across a video, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot of it, so it's not an exact quote, but hopefully you'll get the gist from this story. It's essentially Shaquille O'Neal talking to his son. And, it's not a story about, dunking and championships or highlight reels. He was talking to his son about sacrifice. And his son basically says, Dad, I want to play in the NBA like you. And Shaq's looking at him and saying, then you need to understand what that means. Right? Very stern, very almost concerned demeanor, which pulls you right into the video. It's pretty powerful. He's kind of going through their past. And he says, do you understand what that means? If you want this dream, I need you to understand what it means. And he goes on. And again, I really want to emphasize that I'm paraphrasing the idea, right? But he's essentially saying, if you want this dream, you'll miss birthdays. You'll miss family dinners. You'll miss time with friends. You won't have that balanced, carefree life that most people enjoy. It goes back even deeper. How many birthdays did I miss? Right? His son thinks for a second, a lot, right? How many plays did I miss? How many games? Right? You can see the sort of dots connecting in his son's head, That's the cost of being great at something. That's the price I had to pay. Because the reality is, in I believe what Shaq is getting at, is every dream has a toll booth. Every aspiration has a cost. And the question isn't whether you'll pay. It's whether the life on the other side is worth the price. And it's a question you have to ask yourself. And when you decide that it is, you go all in with every single thing you have. But first, you make sure that it is indeed something that matters to you. And there was a comment under the video that I found almost as intriguing as the video. It really makes you think, right? The comment was, you can have it all, just not all at once. Because today, and Shaq mentions this in the back and forth. He says, today, because of that work I put in, now I can help you. Now I have money to help my family be great. I have these things. But the cost when you were younger was missing a lot. Right? There were certain chapters, certain seasons. Now he has the resources, and now he has the time. But at the beginning, when he was climbing, he didn't. He had to choose. He had to trade comfort for greatness. Moments now for a legacy later. And that's not just his story. That's all of our stories. Life is trade-offs, and I can't emphasize this enough. It's like, you want to build a business? Okay, you're gonna have to sacrifice nights out. You want to run a marathon? Okay, you're gonna have to sacrifice sleeping in, right? To get those miles in before work. You want to write that book, create the art, step into the new identity. You're gonna have to sacrifice approval, sacrifice certainty. You're gonna have to sacrifice ease. Because dreams demand payment in advance. And it's not easy. Sometimes it even feels unfair. Sometimes it's like the universe is asking too much. But ask yourself, isn't that the point? Isn't greatness supposed to require something of us? Wouldn't it mean less if it didn't? You can have it all, just not at once. That line isn't about limitation. I think it's about sequence. It's about patience. About trusting that if you build the foundation today, the house will stand upon it tomorrow. Shaq missed birthdays so that essentially he could provide for birthdays. He missed plays so that he could set the stage for his family's future. He missed games so his kids would never have to miss opportunities. Trade-offs, sacrifices, choices. That's the name of the game. And if you're in a season right now where it feels like you're missing out, remember, you're not losing, you are investing. You're exchanging now for later. You're planting seeds that will grow into trees, forests. So when you're tired, and if you're not right this moment, there will be a time when you are. When you're tempted to quit, if you think that thought will never, even for a moment, enter your head and bounce around, my friend, you are wrong. When you see everyone else laughing and playing and seemingly living these perfect lives while you're working, I need you to remember the truth that was echoed from a father to his son and now to you. That line that by chance I stumbled upon. You can have it all, just not all at once. So in this season of life, choose your all. Choose your sacrifice. Choose the thing you're willing to miss so that one day you can stand where few ever stood. And when someone asks, was it worth it? You'll be able to look back at the life you built, the people you've helped, the legacy you left, and answer without hesitation, yes, it was worth every trade-off, every difficult decision, all the sacrifice, the temporary pain, the suffering. It all helped you design the life you wanted to live with intentionality, with purpose, with passion. It all brought you here. And what a beautiful thing. You can have it all, just not all at once. There's a truth we often forget when we're in the trenches. A truth that feels unglamorous, uncomfortable, sometimes hard on the ego. But nevertheless, it's this. If you are not willing to play the fool, you cannot be the master. It's not optional. It's simply the cost. And sure, when we see it on paper, it makes sense. It sounds almost poetic, like one of those motivational posters you walk by, you glance at, nod, and keep moving. But when you're in it, it's a different story entirely. When you're standing at the intersection of your heart pulling you one way and your head screaming every reason you're not enough, it's no longer poetic. It becomes brutal. Imposter syndrome doesn't knock once and leave. It rings in your head on repeat. Fear of criticism never seems to vanish. The anxiety, the embarrassment, sometimes even anger at being a beginner when it feels like everyone else is an expert. Well, it stacks on top of you until the weight feels unbearable. And in that moment, your mind does a lot of things, but it certainly does not whisper, hey, this is good. This is growth. This is the cost of admission to mastery. No, our lizard brains scream. Run. Run as fast as you can. Get out. Find something easier, something more comfortable, something that feels more you. That's what we're designed to do, solve problems. And again, when our brains see discomfort, when they sense pain, they rush to eliminate the pain. It makes perfect practical sense. Make it stop, the brain says. But what it doesn't understand is that the discomfort is not the problem. Surprise, it's the solution. I'm going to take you way back to one of my favorite examples of this, Michelangelo. Right, when we think of Michelangelo, we certainly think of a genius. You know, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, creation of Adam, the marble David. His name is synonymous with mastery. But here's what most people don't know. When Pope Julius II commanded him to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling, Michelangelo resisted. Didn't feel qualified. In fact, he flat out said he was a sculptor, not a painter. Painting that vast ceiling seemed like an impossible task, way outside of his skill set, and perhaps destined to expose his shortcomings to the world. And so he stalled, and he argued, and he begged to be let out, because like all of us, Michelangelo feared looking like a fool. But history didn't let him hide. The commission went forward, and Michelangelo found himself day after day lying on scaffolding, paint dripping into his eyes, wrestling with a medium he didn't even consider his own. He doubted his abilities. He struggled. He felt like an imposter in his own craft. And yet, 4 years later, he stepped back, and the ceiling he created wasn't just good. It became one of the most celebrated achievements in the history of art. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel wasn't painted by someone confident and certain of his place in history. Much more human experience, right? It was painted by someone who thought they weren't qualified, who felt out of place, who feared being exposed. I don't know if you've been there, but I have. That is the point. Mastery is born in the moments we feel least like masters. And, take that metaphor to the present day. Think about some of the creators you admire most. The ones with millions of followers. The ones who seem to command the camera with ease. If you scroll all the way back to their first videos, right, if they've had the courage to leave them up, you'll find something very different. You'll see someone fumbling through words, rambling without direction. You'll see a lack of confidence, shaky delivery, uncertain eyes staring back into the lens. Or more realistically, probably somewhere around the lens, right? You get the idea. They weren't experts. They weren't even good. But again, that's the point. How could they be? You don't walk into a gym the first time, load the bar up and bench 225. No, you start with weight so light it feels insignificant. While some guy, by the way, across the room is probably curling the same amount you're trying to bench. And that sting, that frustration, that's the toll booth on the road to greatness. The awkwardness, the doubt, insecurity, it's all real, it's all normal, it's all merely the price of admission. But here's the tragedy. Because there is a tragedy, and it is a tragedy of great magnitude. Most people never pay that toll. And it's not because they can't. That's the thing, it's because they won't. They talk themselves out of it before the momentum has a chance to shift, before that tiny snowball rolling downhill turns into an avalanche. They trade long-term mastery for short-term comfort, never realizing they were one rep, one video, one attempt away from the tide turning. And so they go back to what's easy, to what doesn't scare them. They go back to being comfortable, and in doing so, they go back to being stuck. So let me remind you, when you feel foolish, when the weight feels heavy, when your words, stumble out awkwardly and uncertain, this is not failure. This is certainly not proof you don't belong. This is the evidence that you are exactly where you need to be. Because mastery is not about talent handed down from the heavens. It's about walking through the valley of foolishness with enough faith to keep moving. Every single expert you look up to, every voice that's inspired you, every innovator that's changed the game, at some point they were the fool in the room. They stood at the bench lifting less than the guy next to them. They stood behind the camera saying too much or not enough. They stood in front of audiences that did not clap, and they kept going. That's the difference. Not that they were born better or that they had a magical gift you do not. It's that they refused to let being the fool stop them from becoming the master. So next time the little voice says run, get out, you're not good enough, you're embarrassing yourself, stop, take a breath, and remember this is the cost. This is the toll to enter the path you say you want, and if you're willing to pay it, if you can endure the season of looking foolish, the day will come when you'll look back and realize that season was the very thing that made you. Because only those who have the courage to be the fool earn the right to be the master. There's a quote from Richard Branson that stuck with me. He essentially says, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity, but you don't know how to do it, say yes and then figure it out later. This little piece of wisdom is a key that unlocks so much opportunity in life. I mean, it sounds simple, right? Almost too simple, but it contains the DNA of progress and growth and achievement. Because nothing meaningful in life comes with guarantees. Life doesn't hand you certainty, it hands you windows. And when those windows open, hesitation is the enemy. And let's use space travel as an example here. Let's go all the way back to '62. John F. Kennedy standing in front of that crowd at Rice University saying, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Here's the thing. When he said that, the United States had no rocket that could make the trip, no spacecraft, no suit, no navigation system. The roadmap did not exist, but the declaration came first. The yes came first. It had to. Right? And then the entire decade was spent figuring it out. That one leap of faith sparked innovation that not only took humanity to the moon, but changed the world forever. It's easy to forget that truth. You don't need to know how, right, before you start. You don't need to, know the entire path or have it laid out before you. Same industry, a couple decades later, take Elon Musk and SpaceX. To me, it's even more remarkable. Musk wasn't a rocket scientist when he decided to build rockets. He literally taught himself aerospace engineering in textbooks. First 3 launches failed. Of course, everyone told him to quit. Critics said it was impossible. But he'd already said yes, he'd committed. And because of that yes, he kept adjusting, kept learning, kept adapting until the 4th launch worked. And by the way, saved the company. That's the Branson quote in action, right? You say yes and you figure it out. And lately, in my own little world, I've been seeing this principle play out. I'm going to go back to athletics. Again, I go to this drawing board a lot just because there are a lot of metaphors you can make, a lot of parallels you can make. To me, none are as clear, concise, and really depict that one-to-one ratio the same way that fitness does, running does, lifting does. That struggle to me is life, so I pull from it often. My trainer started giving me, on top of the regular workouts, these fun but ridiculous weekend challenges, right? He makes this video, sends it to me, sometimes playfully, like super intense, like here's your mission, and it gamifies it a little bit. But the workouts are hard, right? They push me way out of my comfort zone. Whether it's an hour-long kettlebell carry, 15-minute wall sit, extended treading water, putting on a ruck and climbing my 12-floor stairs for an hour, 200 burpees in 25 minutes. You get the idea. Stuff that, it's not climbing Everest, but you hear it and you go, ooh, that doesn't sound fun. Maybe on the surface, it even sounds a little absurd, and you want to stop and think, can I even do this? But that's the beauty of it. It conditions me to say yes first, and once I commit, there's no more debate, right? The question is no longer if, it's how. And that transition is everything from a starting point. There's no if, this is happening, how is it gonna happen? And when you do that, my God, do you empower yourself, right? Sometimes it's brutal, right? The burpees are a great example. I underestimated those, and I paid the price, right? Got it done, just with probably more suffering than, if I respected the process and came out slowly and methodically as opposed to just thinking I could blast through them. You live and you learn. But again, I got through that micro hell. And that's the pattern of life itself. We spend so much time waiting for certainty, waiting until we feel perfectly ready, forgetting that readiness is a myth. If you wait until you have every detail mapped out, you'll never move. The opportunities that change your life rarely come with instruction manuals. They show up wrapped in uncertainty, in discomfort, in risk. Your job is not to have all the answers. It's to step forward anyway. And what these challenges remind me of is this: I'm stronger than I think. Not because I know everything, but because I trust myself to figure it out as I go. You don't discover strength by watching from the sidelines. You discover it in the fire. You discover it in the chaos. The willingness to step into something you don't fully understand, but you'll adapt. Kennedy certainly didn't know how to get to the moon, but he declared it anyway. He put it into the universe. Musk didn't know how to build rockets, but he started anyway. He committed. Branson was right. Opportunities don't wait for your permission. They don't wait for you to feel ready. So when the next door opens, and it will, don't hesitate. Don't overthink or wait for certainty. Understand the power in saying yes, stepping in, and figuring it out later, because that's how change is made. That's how we grow. And it's how we uncover the strength we've had all along.